Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. So in my last video, I talked a little bit about how I felt because of the reveal so far of the other superhero games that Warner Brothers Games Montreal will have to wow us in the DC Fandom event. In fact, I think I'm going to continue with these conversations for the next few weeks because I'm also looking forward to the DC Fandom event. And I think Warner Brothers Games Montreal is going to be able to bring the heat and step up the ante. But at the same time, this has to be something that we have to speak about and not just leave unsaid. Why? Because sometimes, game developers may have a depiction of things in their own little unit, and when they're doing things, may not necessarily understand how other influences are affecting their fans and their audience. So this is why I believe we need to talk about these things. Another thing too is I'm also providing these little areas where I think there might be potential weaknesses in order to reduce the hype. Because one thing about video games I've learned is sometimes we can set our expectations too high, and once anything falls short, it could tarnish all of the expectations and then cause us to actually have kind of an adverse reaction to what developers present. So this is why I'm doing some of these videos, because I'm a huge fan, but I also want to kind of caution myself as well so that I can basically temper my hype, and so whatever comes, I'm able to accept it for what it is. Nonetheless, I still have a little bit of that mindset where I'm hoping for, a lot of really cool things to appear. So in my last video, I talked about the combat as well. This was my last two videos. I discussed the combat and how I thought that the Arkham Knight combat, which was basically the last game that was done in the Batman series from a Warner Brothers game studio, actually held and set the standard for what superhero games should be. Even so, that one of the directors of the Spider-Man game, Marvel Spider-Man game in 2018, as well as Miles Morales, actually said that the Arkham games was a big influence for their Spider-Man games. Now that they've built two games off of that franchise, they've also revealed a third game, and now this Spider-Man thing is picking up a lot of steam, meaning that the team at Warner Brothers Games Montreal have to do something, even though it's unique, in order for them to compete against this Spider-Man paradigm. Now, I get it. It'll be nice for all these other games to be out there and be, something that is actually a very wonderful collection of different superhero games. But we really have to look at this aspect of the Gotham Knights game, and that is the combat sounds and effects that were revealed in the gameplay trailer at the DC Fandom event in 2020. I mentioned that the sounds and the visual effects didn't necessarily, in my opinion, feel satisfactory, and the way the combat was actually depicted did not necessarily tell a very good story. Now, if you go back to the other Arkham games, yes, these were made by other studios. I believe that there was something very important about combat sounds that Warner Brothers Games really had to, basically embrace, because Rocksteady just put it out there in the Batman games. And I think this is something that Warner Brothers Games Montreal must, in my opinion, adopt in order to continue this game as to where it is. So over the course of this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting in the combat sounds and doing some sound comparisons from the Arkham games, from Arkham Asylum to Arkham Knights, and then also Arkham City. You're going to see that there's a huge difference in the sounds that go with the combat, and you yourself probably will be able to appreciate that there is, in a sense, a case to actually have very good combat sounds to continue the tradition of what the Batman themed or even Batman games and characters have brought to the table. However old or however cute you think the Arkham Asylum game is, I think you can appreciate the fact that when you first played it, there was nothing in the market like it. Those sounds, those animations, those effects, those camera details to emphasize the combat was something that you could pretty much say was phenomenal, or in my opinion, revolutionary. And so when you think about this unique perspective that has always been a foundational part of the game, I think I see exactly where the Spider-Man developers were taking their inspiration from. They understood that one thing you can really showcase whenever you're showcasing a superhero is the superhero's triumph and overpowering of their enemies. And you can do so in many ways. You can do so by the superhero basically dealing a lot of damage to the enemy NPC, but more than necessary, allowing for the player to have that feedback that they're actually, in a sense, the ones dealing the damage to the enemy NPC. Now, I tried my best to look for some research that connected sounds in combat with video games, but I couldn't really find any. So I'm going off of my own experience and the experience of some other gamers. And basically, if you think about the way combat sounds really do influence your gameplay, I can say for certain that it's nice to have satisfying sounds than not. And that's why a lot of the games with either combat or even fighting games emphasize their own kinds of sounds and actually do it very well. And so even when you continue to look through the Arkham collections, what you're going to find is very unique sounds that tell the story that this is some really gruesome and in some cases brutal combat. Another aspect of some of the combat that we've seen from the Arkham games, and I think this is actually what sets it apart from the Spider-Man games, is Batman or even the Bat family's ability to be able to destroy the toys of the bad guys. Now, if you watch or even play the Spider-Man game or the Miles Morales game, you don't really do too much damage to the weapons and the equipment of the enemies. Now, it's already a very challenging feat to program a Spider-Man character that can jump all over the place and fight smooth, unique combat. I can understand if Insomniac decided that they weren't going to really adapt a lot of that into their gameplay mechanics. But one thing that Arkham Knight did very well was actually allow for you to be able to destroy a lot of your enemy NPC tools. In fact, the more emphasis on Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight allowed for you to be able to destroy shields, allowed for you to be able to destroy weapons, destroy all kinds of gadgets, and even in some cases, you could pick up a weapon and use it in Arkham Knight. This kind of integration into the combat was basically Rocksteady's way of saying we're enhancing our combat methodology from game to game to game. Now, I think Warner Brothers Games Montreal is capable of actually adapting or even enhancing what combat perception is in the Arkham games. But I think, again, if they're going to be revealing anything in this new DC fandom reveal that's coming up down the road, I think they need to show these mechanics or their own version of the mechanics that they're going to be bringing to the game in terms of combat. These are things that some players who are more keen-eyed about in-game mechanics are going to be looking at. I can understand there's hype. I can understand there's flash. I can understand that there are all these other things. But if you're not going to bring those aspects that are, in a sense, gritty and in a sense grounded to a Batman game, I think you might lose basically the attention of your audience. And so this is something that I'm, in my opinion anyways, arguing that the developers really need to bring to the forefront. Now for my final thoughts. So I have to admit, the Arkham games were very dark games. Arkham Asylum, in my opinion, being the darkest of all of them. Arkham City followed right behind it as an also, very dark depiction of the Arkham universe and also Arkham Knight. But the Gotham game or the Gotham Knights game did not necessarily seem like it was trying to show anything else than another dark game. In fact, if you look at the opening reveal of Gotham Knights, it starts off with a really dark theme, the presumption that Batman is already dead in an explosion. In fact, at the end of the trailer, they even show this other super dark theme with the Court of Owls, which is also another secret society that is also against Batman that has a very dark history with the character. So even if the combat in the Arkham games was gruesome and we could say, okay, it was adapted that way to follow the game because the game was dark and gruesome, I also think that there might be a case, I'm not saying there has to be a gruesome combat in Gotham Knights, but I'm saying that there probably could be gruesome combat that will be fitting in this context because Gotham Knights, as flashy as it may be, some people who are talking about the color scheme and all of that, is also a very gruesome, dark depiction of the Gotham, universe. And so I don't see any reason why the developers cannot necessarily go gung-ho with that paradigm when it comes to bringing a lot of what that world, is trying to show its gamers and its player base. But again, I just wanted to go ahead and just depict this with a little bit of sound from the combat in the Arkham games and just kind of showcase exactly what I'm kind of talking about, if you get what I mean, because there's that side of gameplay, that side of satisfaction, and these are some of the things that we're going to be looking at when Warner Brothers Games Montreal reveals a little bit more about Gotham Knights. Anyways, I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Please do not take this as me overly hating on Gotham Knights. Nope. I'm looking forward to the game, and like I explained at the beginning of the video, I would love for the developers to put their very best foot forward, because right now, again, in like my past few videos I've been saying, it appears that the competition is getting stiff and the standards are getting higher and higher. Thank you very much for your time and audience. I appreciate you guys so much. And once again, thank you for continuing to watch these videos. Thank you for continuing to support me. I really do thank you guys, because it's really a big deal to have people watch your videos and comment on them. It's no small feat at all. Once again, talk to you guys soon. Peace out.